let's recall some of the ideas that we have learned yesterday. First, we said if we have two real numbers A and B, such that A is less than B or less than or equal, then for any C, for any real number C, we have A plus C is less than or equal to B plus C, and also A minus C still less than or equal to B minus C. Then in the second rule, we said that if A less than B, then for any positive C, A times C is less than or equal to B times C, and also A divided by C is less than B divided by C. That is, the inequality sign doesn't change here only in case C is a positive real number. Otherwise, if A is the smaller, that is, if A is smaller than B, and we multiply both of them by a real negative number C, then AC becomes what? Bigger than BC. And the same thing concerning the division. So when we multiply or divide by a negative number, the sign of the inequality must change. So here we talked about adding. Adding doesn't change the inequality. Adding
بس يعني كنت عم بكتب
is less than 5. 4 is less than 5. Adding a certain number to both sides doesn't change the inequality. Subtracting a positive number from both sides also doesn't change the inequality. You can check this. 6 less than 7, true. This one, 2 is less than 3, true. Multiplying by a positive number, 4 times 3 and 5 times 3, we get 12 and 15, for example. So nothing changes. Dividing by a positive number, that is 4 divided by 2, for example, and 5 divided by 2. Here we get 2 and 2.5, so still the same, nothing changed. However, multiplying or dividing by a negative number, let's say like this will reverse the inequality, because here we'll get -8, there we'll get -10. -8, in fact, is greater than -10. So the inequality is reversed upon multiplying or dividing by a negative number. So in case C is negative, we reverse the inequality as you see in the rule number 3. Now, what happens if we want to square an inequality? If A is smaller than B, then what happens concerning A square and B square? A square stays smaller than B square in case A and B are positive. That is, in case 0 less than A less than B. Okay. However, if A less than B, and we know that if A less than B, but A and B are negative number. This writing means A and B are negative numbers. Then what happens to the comparison of A square and B square? A square becomes bigger than B square. Fine. What about inverting both sides of an inequality? Let's say rule number 6. If A is less than or equal to B, then 1 over A is always greater than 1 over B, regardless of any case. على طول. Always. When we revert or the reciprocal of the smaller is bigger than the reciprocal of the larger number. What about the radical? If A less than B, and of course positive, if A less than B, and both are positive, so that I can find their radicals. So A is smaller than B, this means radical A is smaller than radical B. كمان the inequality, also the inequality doesn't change. We have to take this in consideration. A and B must have the same sign when talking about reciprocals. Otherwise, if A is negative, 1 over A will still less than 1 over B. So, يعني, what do I mean? Look, we know that 3 is less than 10, for example. Well, let's take, for example, 5. 5 is less than 10. Yet, when we find the reciprocals, 1 over 5 and 1 over 10, which is greater? 1 over 5 is equal to 0.2. 1 over 10 is equal to 0.1. Which one is greater? 0.2 is greater than 0.1. So 1 over 5 here is greater than 1 over 10. Okay, so what happened to the inequality in this case? The inequality changes, as you see. It was less than, it becomes greater than. Now, what if we have two negative numbers? Let's say -5 and -10. Which is the greater? -5 is the greater. Now, when we find the reciprocals, 1 over -5 and 1 over -10, this is -0.2. This is -0.1. Which one is closer to 0? -0.1. So this is greater. What happened to the inequality? As you see here, also it has been reversed. It was greater and it becomes less than. Okay. Well, what if we have -5 and 10? One of them is positive and one of them is negative. This is a special case. Here, of course, 10 is greater. What happens when we reverse them? This is 1 over -5 and 1 over 10. Still, without computing any calculation, of course, the positive side will be greater than the negative side. So the inequality, as you see, the inequality doesn't change. So this is a special case. That is when I said here A and B have the same signs. Only when they have same signs, of course, in general, if we have A less than B and we reverse them, find the reciprocals, compare the reciprocals, 1 over A and 1 over B, 1 over A will be greater than 1 over B. The one with the less denominator is greater than the fraction with the greater denominator. Okay? هذه بنعلمها أولاد صغار. 1 over 3 and 1 over 7, which is greater? This one, of course. The one
1
with,
over 3.
one with smaller denominator, exactly. But there is one only special case. Always we have, again, repeat one more time. Always, if you have A less than B, 1 over A is greater than 1 over B. Always, except if A is negative and B is positive. Then in this case, we do not reverse. Stays the same. Okay. لا هذه سبيشال كيس يعني كثير.
استاذ بال7 نيجاتيف او ان نيجاتيف او بوزيتيف.
بوزيتيف فيناش نحكي عن الراديكال اذا كانوا نيجاتيف.
صح.
طيب
استاذ بس بنمبر 5 هن ال A وال B نيجاتيف صح؟
يس.
اوكي.
إذا كانوا negative then when we square the smaller becomes bigger. طيب شوف شغلة هون أنا كتبت have the same sign. Okay. Here هاي الجملة A and B have the same signs. So here we can write this in another way mathematically. مين بيعرف يكتبها بطريقة تانية؟ A and B have the same signs. We can say the following. In case A times B is positive. And this is a very important remark. Okay? Remark.
استاذ ما فيهم يجوا نيجاتيف يعني بيناتهم؟
الله كيف. بلا بس أنا شو كتبت؟ I wrote A times B is positive. يعني طلع
يعني اذا اجوا
يعني إذا كانوا اثنيناتهم
ضل.
ماينس راح يكونوا بوزيتيف.
100%. إذا اثنيناتهم ماينس شو حيصير البرودكت؟ بوزيتيف. وإذا اثنيناتهم بوزيتيف شو حيصير البرودكت؟ positive. So always if the product of two numbers is positive, this means that the two numbers شو؟
are positive.
ليش؟ ما هي
have the same sign.
have the same sign.
Oh.
يعني either both of them are positive or both of them are negative. Otherwise, if they have opposite signs, then what happens to the product?
هيكون negative.
Negative. Okay. So this is the remark. If A and B have the same sign, then or we can say bala, if then A and B have the same sign, this means what? يلا.
The sum is bigger than 0.
Exactly.
أو the
sum
sum
is
is
positive.
positive.
ما عم بحكي عن السم أنا.
sum تبعهم
برودكت.
product.
شو خص السم؟ ما جبنا سيرة السم أبدا. Sum يعني their addition. I can't know. If they are positive, the sum is positive. If they are negative both, then the sum is negative. If one of them is positive and the other is negative, ساعتها ما بنقدر نعرف حسب الابسوليوت فاليو لكل واحد. قصة شو بدنا فيها؟ نحن هلا عم نحكي عن هاي الريمارك. When they have the same sign, both of them, then the product is positive. if they have opposite signs, that is, one of them is negative and the other is positive, then the product will be plus times minus negative. Okay, and the same thing مش بس البرودكت كمان في الكوشنت also، يعني القسمي مثل الضرب have the same sign. Okay, clear.
كلير. بس بالراديكال بتعمل ريفرس شو اسمه
بعمل شو؟
الانيكواليتي، بتعمل
لا.
ريفرس.
لا 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 ابدا، هي A
والله
less than B radical A less than radical B. We don't reverse ابدا. خلينا نشوف المرات اللي reverse فيهم عملنا reverse an inequality when we multiply or divide by a negative number. وعملنا reverse an inequality لما نعمل square ويكونوا both numbers are negative. And then we square we revert. وبنعمل reverse لما نعمل reciprocal. هون الحالات اللي we reverse the inequality. طيب. Now شو حكينا بعد في rule let's say صرنا 7 هون let's say rule number 8 it was comparing what the reciprocal and the radical and the square. We said that if A is a number greater than 1, if A is greater than 1, then 1 over A is less than 1, less than radical A, less than A, less than A square. That is one, you know, no, A is weaker than A square. Radical A is weaker than A. 1 over A is the weakest among all. But this happens when the real number is greater than 1. Otherwise, if the real number is less than 1, then the inequality becomes completely different. Then 1 over A becomes the strongest. It becomes more than 1 and more than radical A. Radical A becomes more than A, and A becomes stronger than A square. And we did take examples about this. If you want, we can repeat the examples again. Let's say I have A equals to 2, for example. Now let's investigate about the others. What about A squared? It's stronger than A. What about radical A? This is 1.7, it's weaker. What about 1 over A? It's 0.5. Let's compare them now. The smaller or the smallest is, the smallest one is 0.5, which is 1 over A. Then 1.7. Then 2. Then 4. And if you want to insert 1 between them, 1 will be here. So here, first of all, we said 1 over A, which is 0.5. Now, 0.5 is 1 over A, 1.7 is radical A, 2 is A, 4 is A squared. So as you see, 1 over A less than 1, less than radical A, less than A squared. However, if we take, for example, A equals to 1 over 4. Okay, what do we get? A squared is 1 over 16. Radical A is 0.5 or 1 over 2. 1 over a is 4. Now, if you want to arrange these values in increasing order, the smallest one among them all is the one with the biggest denominator here. It's a squared. Then a comes a. Then comes radical a. And of course, all of these, 1 over 4, 1 over 16, 1 over 2 are less than 1. However, 1 over a, which is 4, is greater than 1. So we get like this, completely opposite to this one. وهذا مفهوم لازم كلنا نعرفه ونصير، لأنه عادة في مفهوم خاطئ عند الطلاب. بتقول له مين أكبر a square ولا a؟ دوري بيقول لك a square is greater than a. This is not true always. This is true if a greater than 1. Otherwise لا، بصير ال a أكبر من a square. If a less than 1، بس عم نحكي عن positive. Less than 1 in between 0 and 1. طيب بتقول له للتلميذ compare which is greater a or radical a. بيقول لك دوري a is greater than radical a. This is true only if a is greater than 1. However, if a is between 0 and 1, then radical a becomes stronger. تسأل which is greater, for example, a or 1 over a. A is greater. True only if a greater than 1. Otherwise بيصير بالقلب. يعني 5 is greater than 1 over 5 أكيد. But when we are talking about numbers less than 1, let's say 0.2 and 1 over 0.2. No, 1 over 0.2 is greater. Okay. هلا كلهم هول حكيناهم امبارح حبيباتي. بعد في عنا one idea about order in real numbers. It's how to compare real numbers in general. This is an important title. Comparing real numbers. Well, we have many ways. Many ways are used to compare real numbers. For example, you have learned before to compare real numbers that contains radicals. Mostly you square them. For example, تعلمتوا انتم مثلا in grade 9. If I have radical 2 radical 6 and 3 radical 5, which of these numbers, A or B, which one is greater? So the question is compare. What do you do?
Square.
We square A and we square B. So squaring of A, you get 4 times 6, which is 24. Squaring of B, 3 squared is 9. Radical 5 squared is 5. You get 45. Now, A squared is greater than B squared. So A is greater than B. لاحظوا انتوا هون استخدمتوا رولز من اللي شرحناهم هلا هالسنه، بس كنتوا تستخدموها قبل. ليش خليتوا الانيكواليتي؟ مين سمح لي اخلي الانيكواليتي مثل ما هي؟ مين who told me that if A squared is greater than B squared, then A is greater than B?
أستاذ مش البي أكبر؟
ايه استاذ البي
sorry
اكبر.
I am so sorry. يعني A squared is greater less than B squared. This means A is less than B. اوكي؟ طب هيدي وينها؟ هيدي ليك وين موجودة حبيباتي؟ وينها؟ Which number?
4.
Exactly.
Number 4.
Exactly. Number 4 طلع معنا احنا طلع معنا A square less than B square. So this means A is less than B. Okay? ما بنغير inequality. طيب. فإذن this is one of the most used methods to compare real numbers، بس هيدا الشيء عم نحكي لما يكون فيهم radicals، مش على طول بتزبط هيدي الميثود. for example يعني
مش إذا كانت نيجاتيف بينقلب الساين.
exactly، ما هي هيدي هون، هي number 5 شفتها؟ number 5 إذا كانوا negative و a less than b a square greater than b square، والعكس صحيح. now the most used way to compare real numbers to know which number is greater than the other, if we have two real numbers a and b, if a less than b or a greater than b, the most used way to compare them is subtraction. Subtraction شو يعني؟ We subtract them a minus b or b minus a, it doesn't matter. Let's say we get a minus b. What happens in this case? يا حبيبتي
اذا كان البرودكت نيجاتيف، اذا A minus B يعني B greater than A، بالعكس صحيح.
ما اسمها product،
لا شو اسمه؟
subtraction.
subtraction.
difference ماشي. سبق تتذكروا اول السنه؟ تذكر يا حمزه اول السنه قلت انه هو باول حصه، مين بيتذكر؟ قلت لكم انه الاوبريشن والريزلت، تذكروا ان الاوبريشن هيدي A plus B it's called the sum. هيدي adding to real numbers, addition, it's called the sum. Subtraction of two numbers,
it's called difference.
called the difference. Multiplication here is
Product.
the operation, but the result is called the product. وآخر شيء division of two real numbers, it's called the quotient. Okay, do you remember?
Yes.
امبارح اذا سالتكم، يلا ماشي الحال. اوكي فاذا A and B are two real numbers. Okay, if A حبيباتي if A minus B is positive, this means what?
A greater than B.
Exactly. If A minus B is positive, is that the answer of the difference is positive, this means that the first one is greater than the second. This means that the first number is greater than the second. However, if the difference is negative, this means that the second one is the greater. دايما when we subtract two real numbers, we take the sign of the bigger. Okay, so if we subtract them and we get positive, the first one was bigger. If we subtract them and the answer is negative, then the second one is bigger. How do we use such questions or such rules? For example, look, let's take an example. Compare كتير بهذا الدرس بنلاقي أسئلة compare. شفنا examples امبارح، هنرجع نشوف يعني بعد ما بلشنا applications. we use هذا الرول اللي أخذناه بالآخر اللي هو ال1 وال1 over a والradical a وال a square so on. في عندنا هيدي الميثود كمان بكره بنشوف الاكسرسايزز ايمتى هي وايمتى هي. هون we want to compare A and B. The best method هون in this case to compare A and B. وعلى فكرة هذه الميثود very important. Subtracting real numbers. امبارح بنتي بسنة أولى جامعة يعني عم تحل عندها homework math. مش عم تعرف تعمل compare the two real numbers A and B. وهي الميثود is to subtract them. عملت لهم subtract حلتهم بسهولة كتير. هلا بعطيكم الاكزامبل اللي كان مطلوب منها. رح يكون تاني واحد example compare x squared and 2x minus 1. Okay, let's see. By subtraction, let's subtract the first two real numbers, a minus b. That is 3 plus radical 2 minus 5 minus radical 2. نشوف which one is greater. Now we get 3 plus radical 2 minus 5 plus radical 2. Radical 2 plus radical 2, 2 radical 2 minus 2. What do you think about the answer? Is it positive or negative? Which is greater, 2 radical 2 or 2? What?
2 radical 2 أكبر.
Of course 2 radical 2 is greater than 2. في اثنيناتهم فيهم 2 بس
فهي positive.
So the answer is positive. If the answer is positive, this means that the first number was the stronger. This means
That means
A
that A greater than B.
greater than B. Okay. نشوف تاني سؤال. Compare x squared and 2x minus 1. شوفوا الحيل اللي جاي هلا. A minus B is equal x squared minus 2x. We open parentheses. We put them between parentheses in order to change the sign later. We get x squared minus 2x plus 1.
Identity.
Excellent. اللي هي قديش؟
X minus 1
Square.
كده power 2.
Exactly. طب what can you say about the answer? Is it positive or negative?
It is positive because
Positive
في عنا power.
Yeah. Because مش في عنا power, because we have a square. معش أي power. Even power. فإذن we have a square and the square is always positive. What does this mean? إذا طلع an answer positive, this means that A
less than B.
كيف less than B؟ هي طلعت positive. يعني A is greater than B, right? The first one is greater. إذا طلعت negative then becomes بالعكس. Yeah, see you in the second session.